The videos are everywhere. Pastor John Hagee, one of the most powerful voices in American evangelical Christianity, allegedly breaking down, allegedly admitting doubt, allegedly confessing that behind decades of fire and prophecy and end times preaching, something was quietly falling apart. Millions of people clicked. Because John Hagee is not a small figure. He is a man who has shaped the theology of millions of American Christians, who built one of the most influential ministries in the country, whose voice has reached presidents and prime ministers and the highest levels of political power. So if he was admitting something, you needed to know what it was. Here is the truth. The admission is real. The story is real, and it is far more powerful than anything a clickbait thumbnail could contain. John Charles Hagee was born on April 12, 1940 in Baytown, Texas. He grew up in a family rooted in Pentecostal ministry. His father was a pastor, and from the earliest age, the calling on his life was unmistakable. He began preaching as a young man. He built his first congregation. He faced early setbacks, including a painful and public divorce that cost him his initial church and forced him to start again. And he did start again. In 1975, he founded Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas, with a handful of people and a vision that most observers would have called impossibly ambitious. Today, Cornerstone Church has over 22,000 members. John Hagee Ministries broadcasts to approximately 100 nations. His global evangelism television network reaches millions of households. He founded Christians United for Israel, one of the largest pro-Israel organizations in the United States, with millions of members. And he has written over 40 books, many of them bestsellers on prophecy, end times theology, and the relationship between America and Israel in biblical history. 68 years of ministry, an empire built on conviction, and a voice that has never publicly wavered. Until the body started to. Here's what actually happened, and it is not what the clickbait videos told you. John Hagee has faced health crises that would have ended most men's careers entirely. The first came years ago, in the middle of a sermon. He was preaching, doing the thing he had done thousands of times, when his tongue stopped working. Not metaphorically, literally, the muscle failed. He could not speak. A man whose entire ministry is built on the power of his spoken word, standing at a pulpit, unable to produce sound. He was subsequently diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, a serious autoimmune condition that affects the muscles, including the muscles that control speech. Doctors told him he might never preach again. They told him he might never play the saxophone, an instrument he loved, again. He has testified publicly about that moment, about what it felt like to face the possible end of everything he had built, about the prayer and the medical care and the faith that carried him through it. He recovered. He returned to the pulpit, and he kept going. Then came October 2020. John Hagee was 80 years old. COVID-19 was at one of its most dangerous peaks, and Hagee was hospitalized for 15 days with COVID-19 and double pneumonia simultaneously. At 80 years old, 15 days, double pneumonia, the kind of medical situation that statistically does not end well for a man of that age. He has spoken publicly about those 15 days, about the uncertainty, about what it means to lie in a hospital bed at 80 and confront, honestly, without the armor of a sermon or a microphone or a congregation, the question of whether you were going to walk out. He credited his recovery to medical care and to what he called God's sustaining grace. He walked out, and he returned to the pulpit, and he kept going. He has also navigated open-heart surgery and other significant health complications across the years of it. This is a man who has faced his own mortality, repeatedly, concretely, in hospital beds and operating rooms, and continued to show up. So what is the admission that the viral videos are referencing? Here is the honest answer. The admission is not a secret. It is not a hidden confession obtained through some investigative revelation. It is the testimony John Hagee has given publicly about the moments when the body failed, and the future was uncertain, and the questions got louder than the answer. When myasthenia gravis took his voice, and COVID took 15 days of his life, and nearly took more. When open heart surgery places mortality in the hands of surgeons and the grace of God simultaneously. Those are the moments of wrestling. Those are the moments where a man who has spent his life preaching certainty had to sit with uncertainty, not about God, but about himself, about his body, about how much time was left, about what it means to build something as large as what he built, and then face the possibility that you might not be the one to finish it. The clickbait machine took those genuine, powerful human moments of testimony and repackaged them as secret admissions of theological. They are not that. They are something more honest and more interesting than that. They are the testimony of a man who preaches faith and has had to live it under conditions that most of his congregation will never face. As of April 2026, John Hagee is 85 years old. He remains the active senior leader of Hagee Ministries. Official communications from the ministry continue to celebrate his 68-plus years of service. His son, Matt Hagee, has taken on more preaching responsibilities at Cornerstone Church. The ministry describes this as a generational leadership structure, a planned and intentional transition rather than a forced retirement driven by health decline. The ministry is not in crisis. The church is not fracturing. The man who started with a handful of people in San Antonio in 1975 has built something that will outlast him by design. That is not failure. That is the definition of legacy. Here is what the story of John Hagee's health battles and genuine personal testimony reveals. Beneath the clickbait and the dramatic thumbnails and the manufactured admissions, faith that has never been tested is not faith, it is certainty. And certainty does not require courage. What requires courage is standing in a pulpit when your tongue has stopped working and believing that God is still God. What requires courage is lying in a hospital bed at 80 with double pneumonia and choosing consciously, deliberately, to hold on to the thing you have preached for 60 years. What requires courage is facing open heart surgery and then walking back to the microphone and telling your congregation not what doubt feels like in the abstract, but what it feels like to be in a room where the machines are doing the work your heart cannot. That is not a man whose faith has collapsed. That is a man whose faith has been tested in the most concrete and personal ways imaginable and kept going. You can agree or disagree with John Hagee's theology. You can have strong views about his end times prophecies or his political positions or the scale of the empire he has built. But the story of what his body went through and what he did after each crisis is a story about something that transcends all of that. It is a story about what faith actually looks like when the body is failing and the future is uncertain, and the only thing between you and giving up is the thing you have preached your entire life. John Hagee did not secretly admit that his prophecies were wrong. He did not have a hidden breakdown that the internet uncovered. What he did, publicly, repeatedly in his own words, was testify to the moments where his humanity was where the preacher had to become the patient. The prophet had to become the person in the hospital bed, and then get up and go back to the pulpit and keep going. The clickbait machine wanted you to believe that was a story of collapse. It is actually a story of something rarer and more valuable than collapse. But it is a story of endurance. Whatever you believe about John Hagee, about his theology, his politics, his ministry, empire, the endurance is real. At 85 years old, 68 years of ministry, after myasthenia gravis and COVID and open heart surgery and everything else, he is still there, still preaching, still going. That is the admission the viral videos were actually pointing at. They just did not know how to tell it honestly.